The house was unnervingly still that afternoon, the kind of quiet that makes you suddenly aware of the soft hum of the refrigerator or the distant chirping of birds outside. I sat alone in the living room, absently flipping through a magazine without absorbing a single word. My husband, Ryan, was away on another business trip. By now, I had grown used to it, but for some reason, the solitude felt heavier today. I glanced at my phone, half expecting a message or call, but the screen remained blank. The silence pressed in, making me realize just how predictable my life had become. Routine was comforting, yet at the same time, it had become a cage. I loved Ryan, or at least I thought I did. But somewhere along the way, things had shifted. The spark we once had softened into familiarity, and familiarity had dulled into complacency. A sudden sound disrupted the quiet, a car door slamming shut. Curiosity piqued. I peered out the window and saw my nephew, Lucas, making his way toward the house. He was Ryan's younger brother's son, and though he wasn't a frequent visitor, his presence was always lively. When I opened the door, he greeted me with his usual confident smile. "Hey, Lucas. What brings you here?" I asked, masking my surprise. "Uncle Ryan asked me to pick up some documents he left behind," he replied, his eyes gleaming with an effortless charm. "Hope it's not a bad time." "Not at all. Come in," I said, stepping aside. As he walked in, I noticed how easily he carried himself, his energy subtly shifting the atmosphere of the room. He casually tossed his bag onto the couch, giving a quick glance around. "Nice place as always." "You've got great taste, Aunt," he remarked with a smirk. I chuckled, waving off the compliment. "Flattery won't get you out of trouble. What papers are you looking for?" Lucas shrugged. "Something about property documents, I think." As he made his way to the study, I found myself observing him in a way I hadn't before. He was nothing like Ryan. Where my husband was predictable and composed, Lucas was spontaneous, magnetic, and unapologetically self-assured. The thought unsettled me, and I quickly pushed it aside. He was family after all. A few minutes later he returned with the documents in hand, his sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal a tattoo on his forearm. My eyes lingered on the ink before I even realized I was staring. Lucas caught my gaze and smirked. "You like it?" he asked, amusement dancing in his expression. "It's interesting," I admitted, feeling the slightest tinge of embarrassment. We settled into conversation, and before I knew it, laughter filled the space that had felt so empty just moments ago. Lucas had a way with words. His stories were animated and full of humor, a stark contrast to the monotony I had unknowingly grown accustomed to. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about Ryan, my responsibilities, or the unspoken expectations that governed my life. It was just Lucas and me, caught in a moment that defied definition. His presence was disarming, his attention unwavering. He listened in a way that felt rare, genuinely invested in every word I said. It was intoxicating in a way I hadn't expected. At one point, he reached for a glass of water on the coffee table at the same time I did. Our fingers brushed, just a fleeting touch, but it sent a strange warmth through me. Instinctively, I pulled back, letting out a light laugh, but I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. Lucas studied me, his expression unreadable. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice casual, yet there was something deeper in his gaze, something that made my pulse quicken. "Of course," I answered quickly, rising to my feet to create some distance. "It's just warm in here, that's all." But even as I moved away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in that brief moment. A current beneath the surface, unspoken yet impossible to ignore. I busied myself in the kitchen, my hands moving with purpose as I tried to dispel the lingering tension. Yet, even with the clatter of dishes and the rhythmic chopping of vegetables, I was acutely aware of Lucas's presence. When I turned, he was standing in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame, exuding effortless confidence. "You seem different today," he observed, his voice quieter than before. "Different how?" I asked, feigning indifference, though his words had caught me off guard. I don't know, more alive. There was a raw honesty in his tone, making it impossible to brush off as mere flattery. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly seen, and the realization unsettled me. Lucas, you should probably go soon, I murmured, avoiding his gaze. Why? He asked, stepping forward. No reason. Just. I faltered. His piercing gaze locked onto mine, and I had no answer. Or maybe I did, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. The space between us grew heavy with words left unsaid, emotions left unacknowledged. Lucas was close now. Too close. My resolve wavered. This isn't right, I whispered, more to convince myself than him. I know, he replied, his voice calm and unwavering. But doesn't it feel right? My pulse quickened as I met his eyes. The world outside ceased to exist. It was just the two of us, caught in a moment that felt both forbidden and inevitable. He reached out, his fingers barely brushing against mine. I didn't pull away. The air around us thickened, the distance between us dissolving as if it had never been there. My mind screamed at me to step back, to think of the consequences, yet I remained rooted in place. Then, like a thunderclap, the front door creaked open. The charged silence shattered. My heart pounded as Lucas and I instinctively moved apart, turning toward the source of the intrusion. Standing in the doorway was Tyler, Lucas's cousin. His expression was a mixture of confusion and quiet suspicion. Hey, Tyler said slowly, his eyes flicking between us. Am I interrupting something? No, of course not, I responded quickly, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. Lucas was just leaving. He came to pick up some papers for Ryan. Lucas, ever composed, flashed a casual grin. Yeah, that's right. Tyler raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. Uncle asked me to pick up those same papers. My stomach twisted. Lucas's excuse had just unraveled before us. Tyler's presence was a stark reminder of the line I had nearly crossed. Shame crashed over me like a relentless wave. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said hastily, desperate to regain some semblance of control. Lucas already has the documents. There's no need for you to stay. Tyler remained unmoving, his sharp gaze studying me. Funny, he didn't mention you'd be here. Lucas merely shrugged, his relaxed demeanor unshaken. Didn't think it mattered. We were just catching up, that's all. His words were light, yet they carried an undercurrent of something unspoken. Tyler seemed to sense it. He lingered a moment longer before nodding stiffly. Well, I'll let you two. Continue, he said, his tone measured, before turning on his heel and stepping out, leaving the door slightly ajar behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. I turned to Lucas, my emotions tangled in a whirlwind of guilt and confusion. His expression was unreadable.